Katie from Rabbit Leader Sewing Patterns, and this is the Readers, the freebie version. It's a raw edge pattern and you can make it from either cork or vinyl. It's part of a full pattern that's coming out at the end of November 24, which will have 5 different versions, 3 raw edge and 2 which are woven, one with binding, and it will also have SVG files included with that one. But this particular little one, quick and simple to make, I like to call it my stress busting stash buster. Stress busting because it requires just enough focus to take your mind off those little everyday problems, but it's still a really easy and relaxing sew. And stash buster because you only need a piece of leftover cork or vinyl round about 15 times 14 centimeters, 5.5 by 6 inches to make it. So very easy. There's 2 different methods for sewing it. One, you can use a different colour thread so that you don't see the thread on the inside, or the second way is actually just continuous sewing all the way around and you get a nice contrasting stitch with that one. So the link is in the description below, and let's get sewing. So our reader's piece is cut out and ready to sew, and we're going to be using method 1 for this piece because we want a colour on this side that's going to contrast slightly with the front so we can see the stitching. But on this side, when it's folded over, we want this thread to actually match the backing a little bit more closely. So in order to do that, we need to actually sew the top bit first with top stitching, and then we're going to fold it in half and sew the case together. The first thing we'll do though is actually mark the pattern up. So we're going to need, in this instance, a mark on the outside of the case. So we just fold it in half like that. And we just put a little bit of a mark where those edges meet. It doesn't have to be precise. And we'll also put the mark in for the label that we're going to be attaching during the sewing process. So your label is positioned 1.5 inches up from the bottom and along the shorter edge. Mark in there. And put a little bit of double-sided just to hold the label in place. Positioning your tape right onto the very edge and up against that mark. We're not going to put the label on at this point, we're going to do that afterwards because there's a danger that you'll pull it off while you're sewing the first bit, and we don't want that to happen. So now we're ready to go with this one. Right, we're ready to sew our readers with method 1. Method 1 uses 2 different coloured threads. We have a darker thread that's going to match, or actually contrast with the outside and give us a nice line of stitching. But because we don't want it to show too much on the inside, we've got a lighter colour thread. So we're actually going to start sewing at the mark we made here, and we're going to finish at this edge, and then we will change the thread in the bobbin, attach the label and finish the case off. I've got the case positioned under the needle and I have it lined up pretty much with where the mark is that we made, but we're going to go backwards for 2 stitches first, and then we're going to come forwards for 2 stitches. Now you'll notice I'm holding onto the thread. You must do that at all times with this case because you don't want bird's nests on the back of the needle. So we're going to, as we approach this corner, what we're going to do is we're going to lift the foot, turn the fabric slightly, take a stitch, lift and turn, and we're lining the edge of the fabric up with that mark that we made on our foot. Or if you haven't got a mark on your foot, you just eyeball somewhere the 3mm, 1/8 of an inch in. Lift and turn. Thing about this case is you don't actually need to rush it. I mean, I'm sure if you're going to churn a whole load out for a market, you might want to speed up a bit, but just enjoy it. Enjoy the process. Sewing's about having fun. shouldn't be stressful. Well, it is stressful at times. Things don't always go right. Things are a challenge. But this shouldn't be. So just go nice and slowly. Again, you might want to just lift a little bit when you get near the edge. It's a little bit easy to end up too close to the edge if you're not careful. Take your stitch as close to the edge as you can, but I don't recommend going over it. And then go backward for 2 stitches and then forward again. Okay, so we're going to stop sewing there. Okay, so I've trimmed off the loose threads from the ends and we're ready to finish the bag. So the first thing we need to do is fold it in half and match up these corners. Just use a couple of clips to hold it in place. Another one up there. Peel off the tape. Sorry. Peel off the tape. And then we'll put the label on. So lining it up just about 1 millimetre in from the edge and lined up with the mark. Fold it over till it meets the edge. Sometimes it doesn't want to go. There we are. Just whack a little clip on there to hold it in position for a minute, and now we're ready to sew. So what's important now is that we get the needle lined up into the last line of stitching that we did, because you want to see a continuous line, particularly when you turn it over and you've got the same colour. So just fiddle about a little bit if you need to. I like to do it like that. And ideally, you want the needle to go just this side of this line, and you're going to stitch over that edge. So we're going to come 1 stitch forward, 1 stitch back, and then we're going to sew forward again. And again, we can now look at that mark. Take that clip out. Use your little pointy thing just to make sure that that label doesn't get turned over. When you get down to the corner, we're going to do the whole foot lifting thing again. So lift the foot and a little turn, lift the foot. You get the idea. And just continue sewing till the end. And if you're sewing a lot, remember not to push that button. Okay, so we'll just give that a little bit of a trim. You can tidy any small loose ends up afterwards. And there we have it. So we've got thread matching the lining on the one side and the contrasting thread on the other. Our reader's case is cut out and ready to sew, and this is method 2, which is where we're going to be sewing around the whole thing in one continuous pass. First thing we need to do is make a couple of marks. So we'll turn it over, and you can see I already made one there. Fold it in half so that the bottom matches up nicely and the top corner matches, or the short edge reaches the long edge, and we're just going to make a mark there. When we're doing the sewing, we're actually going to pause there and continue on after we've folded the case over. The next thing we'll need to do is to add a label. Again, we're adding it on this shorter edge, and we're going to add it 1.5 inches up from the bottom. If you're not adding a label, you can just skip this bit. You can always just fold over a little tiny piece of fabric which will kind of simulate a label if you don't have one. Make a little bit of a mark there. Next we'll apply a little bit of double-sided tape. This is just going to hold our label in place while we're positioning it. That needs to go right on the very edge. You can see that here I've got just 3mm double-sided, because you don't want it sticking out afterwards. Pull that away. Oop, squash the label. I'm going to take our little label and we'll position it just a hair's breadth, about 1 millimetre in from the edge, if you can see that. And then we fold the label over, and you want that to neatly meet the very edge of the label. It's a bit difficult doing it from this angle. You could see me, I'm very much contortioning here. Anyway, so got a label there, and we'll just put a little clip on that just to hold it in place. Now this one is ready to sew. We're going to be sewing the whole thing with just one line of stitches, so we have the same colour thread in both the bobbin and the needle. I'm using top stitching thread because I think it gives a nicer look. So the first thing to do is flip it over, and we're going to be starting at this shorter edge, sewing round to this mark here, pausing, then we'll fold the case over and we'll continue sewing. I've actually made a little mark on my foot so that I can see where to line the edge up against. This is just a regular J foot for a domestic machine. This one has a clear window in the middle, which makes it a bit easier. You don't have to make a mark on your foot, you can actually just eyeball part of it. I'm starting a couple of stitches in from the edge, and I'm going to go backwards first. And then I'm going to come forwards, and I'm going to take it nice and slowly and keep that mark lined up with the edge of my little bag here. You don't need to go quickly. There is a big temptation to speed up when you're sewing, particularly if you're panicking. You go, oh, if I go faster it'll get it over with. It does, but it's horrible. Don't do it. Nice and smoothly. Speed up a bit, if you like, when you get to the straight bits. When you get to the corner, just lift your foot slightly. I'm lucky I've got a knee lift, that makes it easier. Come one stitch forward, lift and turn, one stitch forward, lift and turn, one stitch forward, blah blah blah, and that actually will give you a nice smooth curve. So you're lining the edge up every single time you turn it, again with that little mark in there. And now we're just going to come forward a little bit to that line that we made, and we're going to stop. Now you're going to lift. What we'll do first actually is we'll just cut these off here. So cut these threads off, get those out the way. And we're going to now lift your foot and fold this over. We want to line up the sides and also line up the bottom corner. I'm going to put a clip in there, which is proving tricky to get it under, but anyway, I'll get there in a sec. There we are, one on the corner to hold that together. And one near the edge. That bit you can just push down. Now when you get to the label, word of caution, I like to use an awl just to hold it in position there. So we're lined up, we're ready to go. Now the first stitch you take over the top, you want to go back again and then forward again. That just reinforces that edge, because that's going to get a bit more wear and tear from people pulling their glasses in and out. Then we'll just stitch forward again. This is where you want to make sure that label is nice and flat. You do not want it to bend backwards on you. go. We can take that one out. Had the quick unpick there, that was very pessimistic. If it's come slightly online, just line it up again. We'll get to the next corner, we're going to repeat what we did before. Lift and turn, one stitch, lift and turn, lift and turn. Obviously, if you're a very confident sewer, you don't need to do that. Most people struggle a bit with curves though and getting them straight. Get to the end, just a couple of stitches back, again just to make sure it's nice and firm, and your stitching is complete. Trim those off. You can use a lighter to get rid of any rough edges, and there you have it, nice little reader's case.